So I am actually holding a ceramic coffee cup right now. And, if I just open my fingers, it's going to fall.
Right, and it's going to shatter all over the floor.
Exactly. It'll completely shatter because, well, gravity pulled it down, right? I mean, that is basically the most inescapable fact of physical reality.
It's the baseline. It's what we all experience every single day.
Yeah, but this is where we're going today. What if there is no actual force pulling that cup? What if gravity, this like invisible tether that we base our entire understanding of the universe on, is just an illusion?
Or, to use the text's terminology, a temporary friction. A friction created by the universe just trying to balance its checkbook.
It is such a disorienting thought, honestly. But to even entertain it, you basically have to be willing to suspend everything you were taught in high school physics. You have to look at the bedrock of reality and ask if it's, I don't know, just painted scenery.
You really do. And that is the exact premise of today's deep dive. We are stepping into Volume 1 of Sandeep Chavan's The War of Thoughts.
Specifically, the section titled Cracks in the Known, right?
Yes, exactly. Chavan introduces this revolutionary framework called Universal Energy Dynamics, or UED. And what's fascinating is how he presents it.
Oh, I love the presentation. He doesn't just lay out a dry academic thesis. The text builds this, well, it's like an impossible amphitheater.
Yeah, a conceptual arena.
Yeah, imagine a space existing entirely outside of space and time. So there are no walls, there's no ceiling. It's just a shifting arena woven out of pure thought. And into this arena, history's greatest minds are summoned.
We are talking about the absolute architects of human understanding here. Plato, Isaac Newton, Albert Einstein, Stephen Hawking.
But, and this is the kicker, they aren't brought there to give their famous lectures while everyone just nods along. Today's source material essentially throws them into the hot seat.
It really does. It takes a sledgehammer to the four main pillars of reality that these thinkers built.
Exactly. We're going to look at why Plato's definition of truth might be completely backward. We'll look at why apples don't actually fall the way Newton or Einstein thought.
We'll also examine why the clock on your wall is literally lying to you about the flow of time.
Right. And finally, why the Big Bang might never have banged at all.
Yeah.
It's wild stuff. But, before we step into that arena, we really need to set the parameters for this exploration for you, the listener.
That's a very important point. A framework like UED challenges the foundational mechanics of our existence. So, as your guides through this material, our role is not to take sides.
Right. We aren't declaring Chavan's framework as the undisputed law of the cosmos.
No, not at all. Nor are we rushing to defend the historical titans. We are here to impartially unpack the logic of this incredibly provocative text. We just want to examine how it attempts to rewire our understanding of cause, effect, and existence.
Completely impartial. So if we are going to rewire physics, we can't really start with equations, right? We have to start with the concept that sits underneath every single equation ever written.
The concept of truth itself. Because if your definition of what is true is flawed, then your physics will inevitably be flawed.
Absolutely. So the text shifts the amphitheater. The void suddenly builds itself into the ancient Athenian academy. Picture huge, solemn marble columns rising up around us, casting these long shadows across the stone floor.
It's a very striking visual.
It is. And sitting perfectly still at the center of this space is Plato. And hovering right in his hand is a glowing, flawless polyhedron.
And that polyhedron is vital to understand. It represents Plato's classical argument regarding truth. To understand why Chavan attacks this, we have to understand what Plato originally built.
Right, because for over 2 millennia, Western thought has been heavily influenced by this. Plato's theory of forms, and of course his allegory of the cave.
Yes. Plato argued that the physical reality we interact with, so the chairs, the trees, our own bodies, is not actually real. He saw it as a degraded copy.
Right. Let's quickly review the allegory of the cave just to make sure we are all on the same page.
Yep.
It describes a group of prisoners who've been chained inside a dark cave their entire lives, facing a blank wall.
And behind them is a fire.
Exactly. People walk in front of the fire, holding up objects, which cast shadows on the wall. And because these prisoners have never seen anything else, they believe those flickering, distorted shadows are the absolute truth.
They literally think the shadow of a horse is the actual horse.
Right. And Plato argued that you, me, everyone listening, we are those prisoners. The physical world is just shadows.
He posited that truth exists in a higher, inaccessible realm. A realm of perfect, fixed, unchanging forms, like the perfect concept of justice or the perfect circle.
So in this view, truth is basically a monument. It is eternal, It's untouched by human perception, and it's utterly indifferent to the messy, changing nature of physical reality.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, let's
Okay.
unpack this. Truth is essentially an untouchable rule book sitting under thick glass in a museum. It's pristine, but it doesn't actually do anything.
And this is exactly where Sandeep Chavan steps into the arena and introduces universal energy dynamics.
Right. He looks at Plato's perfect, glowing shape and asks a question that, frankly, feels a bit dangerous. He says, if reality is ever-changing, how can truth be unchanging?
It highlights a massive logical disconnect in classical philosophy. If truth floats above life, completely untouched by it, then it has no actual stake or functional role in the universe.
It's just sitting there.
Exactly. In the UED framework, Chavan argues that truth is not a premise. It was not the foundational block sitting at the bottom of the universe waiting to be discovered. Truth is an effect.
I love how the text visualizes this. Under UED, truth is described as a trail.
Yeah.
It's the imprint left behind when intelligent energy interacts with its environment.
It's an active ecosystem that adapts to the weather rather than a statue in the park.
Okay, but if I can play devil's advocate for a second here.
Please do.
If truth is just an imprint of an interaction, and it is always shifting based on perception, doesn't that lead to total subjective chaos? I mean, if my interaction is different from your interaction, then my truth is different from yours, and suddenly the word truth means absolutely nothing.
That is the immediate instinctive fear when humanity is asked to let go of absolutes. We assume that without a rigid anchor, we just drift into meaninglessness.
Right, because nobody wants a universe where nothing is actually true.
But the text doesn't argue for subjective chaos at all. It argues for a rigorous mechanical process. Truth isn't whatever you want it to be. Truth is a specific outcome of energetic forces.
Okay, so how does it demonstrate that?
Well, the text brings in a very famous piece of modern physics, Schrödinger's cat.
Oh, man. The famous thought experiment from quantum mechanics. Okay, so a cat is placed in a sealed steel box, along with a Geiger counter, a vial of poison, and a tiny bit of a radioactive substance.
Right.
And if a single atom decays, the counter triggers a hammer that shatters the poison, and the cat dies. If the atom does not decay, the cat lives.
And classical quantum mechanics says that until you open the box and look, the cat is in a superposition of states. It is simultaneously both alive and dead.
Which is just a mathematical way of describing probabilities, right?
Exactly. But Chavan uses this to demonstrate the UED definition of truth. In UED, the cat isn't magically existing in two contradictory biological states.
And what's it doing?
The cat is in a state of indeterminacy because truth hasn't arrived yet.
Wait, truth hasn't arrived. How can a state of reality just not arrive? I mean, the cat is either breathing or it isn't, right?
Well, because truth requires a catalyst. According to UED, truth only arises where four specific forces intersect: perception, intent, consequence, and equilibrium.
Perception, intent, consequence, equilibrium, PICE.
Right. Until that act of engagement happens, until the box is opened, the observer's perception interacts with the localized energy, intent is applied, and a consequence is forced into a balanced state. The truth of the cat literally does not exist.
Oh, wow. So truth is not sitting in the box waiting for you to find it. It is forged in the exact moment of interaction.
Yes, truth is the resolution of that interaction.
So going back to Plato in the amphitheater with his glowing shape, if truth has to be forged by interaction, his perfect untouchable polyhedron is actually dead.
Dead in the sense that it is non-functional, yes.
And the text describes this beautiful moment where Plato's static form begins to tremble. The cave of shadows isn't an illusion. It's like a womb of becoming.
That's a great way to put it. Plato's fixed geometry starts to stretch and reach out toward Chavan's UED model.
Which looks like this rippling, fluid field of interacting waves. And they just merge together.
It's the merging of the monument and the wave. The perfect geometry doesn't shatter, but it ceases to be rigid.
It proves Chavan's core philosophical argument, right? For truth to be real in a universe defined by motion, it must evolve. It adapts constantly to maintain alignment and equilibrium with reality.
It's a massive philosophical shift, but philosophy is just the warm-up in this text.
Oh, totally. Because if truth isn't a fixed rulebook, but rather an evolving energy state seeking equilibrium, well, that completely shatters the physical laws we treat as absolute.
Which brings us to the most stubborn, undeniable truth in all of human experience.
Things fall down.
Yes. We have to shift our focus to gravity, because if you crack the foundation of absolute truth, you have to reevaluate the absolute forces that govern matter.
So the text morphs the amphitheater again. The marble columns of Athens just melt away. Suddenly, we are suspended in a vast, dizzying space.
It's a visual representation of curved space-time.
Yeah, glowing, complex equations are floating in the air, constellations are swirling around us, and sitting in the hot seats are the two absolute titans of classical and modern physics.
Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein.
Newton is sitting perfectly straight-backed, holding his famous apple, and Einstein, hair totally wild, is sitting in a chair woven out of the literal curvature of space and time.
These two men gave us the functional definitions of gravity that literally built the modern world. We should probably explore exactly what they proposed before we look at how UED dismantles it.
Good call. So Newton published his Principia in 1687, and it was a revelation. He argued that gravity is a measurable universal force of attraction between two masses.
Right. You drop the apple, and it falls to the earth because the earth pulls it. He called it action at a distance.
It was elegant, it was mathematically pristine, and it allowed us to calculate the orbits of the planets.
But it had a flaw, didn't it?
A huge one. Newton could calculate how gravity worked, but he couldn't explain what it was. I mean, he didn't know how the Earth could reach out across millions of miles of empty space and pull on the moon without any physical strings attached.
And worse, his math started to fail when we looked really closely at the orbit of Mercury.
Which opened the door for Einstein in 1915. Einstein looked at the problem and basically said, there is no invisible string pulling the apple. Gravity isn't a force at all.
Einstein proposed general relativity. He argued that space and time are fused together into a four-dimensional fabric, and massive objects, like the Earth, warp and bend that fabric.
It's the classic bowling ball on a trampoline analogy, right?
Yeah.
Put a heavy bowling ball in the middle of a trampoline, and the mat sinks down.
Yes, exactly.
If you roll a marble across the mat, it curves toward the bowling ball. Not because the bowling ball is magnetically pulling it, but because the marble is just following the curve of the fabric.
So Einstein said the apple falls not because of a pull, but because the space around the Earth is curved downward.
It remains one of the most brilliant conceptual leaps in human history. I mean, it's genius.
It is. But Chavan introduces a stress test into the amphitheater. He drops a black hole into the simulation to test both the force of Newton and the fabric of Einstein.
Okay, a black hole. Just as a refresher, a black hole is formed when a massive star collapses in on itself. It becomes so incredibly dense that its gravitational pull traps everything, even light.
But it's what is at the very center of the black hole that creates the problem for these theories, the singularity.
Right. A singularity is a point of infinite density. And at the singularity, the laws of physics as we know them just break down.
Specifically, space-time collapses. The mathematical equations of general relativity produce infinities, meaning the theory stops making sense. The fabric of space ceases to exist in any measurable, coherent way.
Let me work through the logic of this, because this is where the UED framework really drops the hammer.
Go ahead.
If I am looking at Einstein's model, and the singularity destroys the fabric of space, then the trampoline is gone. And if there is no trampoline, there is no fabric to curve. Einstein's gravity requires a medium to bend, and the black hole destroys the medium.
Exactly. The geometry has no canvas.
Right. And it's just as bad for Newton. Newton relies on action at a distance. But if space collapses, distance ceases to exist.
Yeah.
You can't have distance without space.
You certainly cannot.
And if you have no distance, a force acting across a distance is a completely meaningless concept. The black hole paradox breaks both models simultaneously. So, if Einstein needs space and Newton needs distance and the black hole annihilates both, what the heck is gravity?
This is Chavan's opening. In the UED framework, gravity is not a fundamental independent force of the universe, nor is it a geometric curve. Gravity is described as fictional friction.
Fictional friction. I mean, that sounds almost contradictory.
How so?
Well, if I trip and scrape my knee on the pavement, that friction feels very real, not fictional. How is gravity just friction?
To grasp this, we must look at how UED defines energy. According to Chavan, the fundamental nature of all energy is to seek perfect equilibrium, a state of absolute balance.
Okay.
When mass exists in a space, it creates an asymmetry. It is a localized imbalance in the energy field. The surrounding energy immediately seeks to resolve that tension and return to equilibrium.
Okay, let me try an analogy here to see if I'm getting this. Imagine you were swimming in a fast-moving river, but you were trying to swim upstream against the current.
You're right.
You feel this intense pressure pushing against your chest. Now, you aren't being pulled backward by some magical tractor beam. You are just experiencing the resistance of the water, the energy of the river, trying to settle back into a flat, downstream state.
That makes sense.
The water is just seeking its lowest point of equilibrium, and you, as an object disrupting that flow, experience that process as physical pressure. Is that what we mean by fictional friction?
It is a really good starting point, but the text takes a slightly different, more integrated angle. In a river, the water is a separate entity pushing against you.
Right, me and the water are two different things.
But in UED, you and the river are composed of the exact same fundamental energetic fabric. The friction isn't water hitting your skin, it is a systemic recalibration.
So it's all one system just trying to even itself out.
Exactly. When your coffee cup is released from your hand, it moves toward the earth because the localized energy field is resolving the massive energetic imbalance between the cup's mass and the earth's mass.
Ah, so the movement of the cup is literally just the path of least resistance toward energetic equilibrium.
Yes.
Yeah.
What we experience and measure as gravity is simply our observation of that tension being resolved.
Man, so gravity isn't an actor on the stage. It's just the dust kicked up by the actors moving around. It's the wake left behind by energy balancing its ledger.
That completely reframes the black hole paradox we were just talking about.
It really does. Because under UED, inside the singularity of a black hole, the energy has reached total, absolute collapse. The compression is absolute. The imbalance has been resolved to zero.
Which brings us to what the text calls Chavan's law. Classical mathematics often suggests that gravity inside a black hole intensifies toward infinity.
Right, an infinite pull.
But UED states the exact opposite. Inside the singularity, gravity evaporates. It vanishes.
Wait, really? It vanishes.
Yes, because if gravity is merely the friction of energy-seeking balance and total balance has been achieved, there is no more friction. The cosmic accountant has balanced the books, and so the accountant disappears.
That is wow. And what's wild is that the text notes this same principle applies on the opposite end of the scale too, the quantum level.
Yes, the microscale.
Physicists have always struggled with the fact that gravity seems functionally non-existent at the atomic scale. Like a proton and an electron don't interact gravitationally in any way that matters compared to electromagnetism. We've always just said, well, I guess gravity is just uniquely weak.
But UED provides a structural reason for that perceived weakness, which is known as Chavan's limit. At the atomic scale, gravity isn't just weak, it is largely irrelevant.
Why?
Because an atom is a system operating in near-perfect energetic equilibrium. The proton, neutron, and electron interactions are highly balanced states of energy.
Oh, I see. Because there is no major macroscopic imbalance-seeking resolution, there is no systemic friction being generated. Gravity's job is already done before it even starts.
Precisely.
It's astounding. Newton measured the friction, Einstein mapped the shape of the friction, but neither realized it was just a temporary symptom of an unbalanced universe.
It changes everything about how we view mechanics.
But, and here's the rub, if gravity isn't a fixed force, if it is just a process of energy shifting from a state of imbalance to a state of balance, that implies a sequence of events.
It does. First you have imbalance, then you have motion, then you have equilibrium.
Exactly. And the moment we talk about a sequence of events, we trip the most dangerous wire in all of physics.
Time. Because how can you measure a process of transition if the clock itself is flawed?
Right. And the amphitheater shifts again. The floating equations and the curved space-time just disappear. Now we have clocks melting into the floor, hourglasses where the sand is flowing upward, calendars burning into ash.
It's a surreal environment for a reason.
And into this space rolls Stephen Hawking, bathed in this halo of digital decaying code. And Hawking comes armed with the most intuitive, seemingly unassailable argument for the existence of time.
The arrow of entropy.
The arrow of entropy. Thermodynamics is just a formidable fortress, isn't it?
It is. Hawking's argument is grounded in the second law of thermodynamics, which states that in an isolated system, entropy or disorder always increases.
The universe moves from a state of order to a state of chaos.
Exactly. Hawking used this to define this psychological and thermodynamic arrow of time. He points out that if a ceramic teacup falls off a table and shatters, it moves from a highly ordered state to a disordered state.
Right. And we have never, ever witnessed a shattered cup spontaneously reassemble its shards and jump back up onto the table.
Never. Heat dissipates into the cold vacuum, stars burn out and die, human bodies decay. This irreversible directionality proves to him that a fundamental dimension called time exists and is moving unilaterally forward.
It is an incredibly difficult argument to counter. I mean, you can't argue with a shattered teacup. It physically happened.
But Chavan does counter it. He runs a simulation in the amphitheater to demonstrate what he calls the illusion of sequence.
Okay, this part was fascinating.
He asks us to look at a single event, a swinging pendulum, through the eyes of three entirely different observers.
Right. This simulation is basically the linchpin for UED's dismantling of time. It forces us to separate the physical event from the measurement of the event.
So let's break down the three observers.
Okay, the first observer is a young child. To the child, who is just staring at this brass weight swinging back and forth, completely mesmerized, the swing seems to take forever. The experience of the duration expands.
Right. The second observer is a monk in a state of deep meditative equanimity. To the monk, the swing just is. It isn't fast, it isn't slow. The concept of time detaches completely from the physical movement.
And then the third observer is an artificial intelligence. The AI measures the swing in nanoseconds, logging spatial coordinates. For the AI, there is no experiential duration at all, merely sequential data processing.
Now, notice that the physical event, the kinetic energy of the pendulum moving through space, is identical in all three scenarios.
Completely identical.
Yet the sequence, duration, and weight of time vary wildly for each observer. The text uses this to propose that there is no universal objective ticking clock running in the background of the cosmos.
So what we rigidly define as time is entirely relative to the observer's state of awareness and data processing.
Yeah.
Okay, I hear that, and I understand that human perception is flawed. Like if I'm sitting in bad traffic, 5 minutes feels like an hour.
We've all been there.
But I have a major issue with extrapolating that to the entire cosmos. If time is just a perceptual illusion, why do our bodies physically age? Why does my hair turn gray? Why do stars exhaust their hydrogen and collapse? You can't tell me that cellular degeneration is just a trick of my awareness.
That is the exact friction point where most people reject the idea of a timeless universe. It feels too contradictory to our biology.
It really does.
But the text provides a profound synthesis here. In the amphitheater, the avatar of Krishna speaks up.
Oh, right, the mythological and philosophical integration.
Yes. And Krishna offers a devastatingly simple insight. He says, you age not because of time, but because of imbalance.
Aging is due to imbalance, not time. Okay, I need you to break that down for me because that is a leap.
Let's look at your graying hair. Why does it turn gray? It is not because invisible units called seconds and years have physically piled up inside your follicles.
Right, seconds aren't a physical substance.
Exactly. It happens because the biological and chemical energy systems in your cells are transitioning from one state of equilibrium to another. The production of melanin slows down due to genetic and environmental factors.
Okay, I follow that.
So yes, this is entropy. Yes, the state is changing. But entropy is a measure of state change, not a measure of a dimension called time.
So we are looking at the physical evidence of change. The dying star, the shattered cup, the gray hair, and we invent an invisible dimension to explain it.
We are looking at the wake of a boat and confusing the wake for the river itself.
Wow. The text refers to time as the residue of transition, doesn't it? Under UED, time does not flow, events flow.
Energy shifts from imbalance to balance. We mistake the interval between these physical energy states for a fundamental woven dimension of reality.
Okay, but if the universe isn't a clock, but rather a massive field of falling dominoes, how do we organize reality? I mean, if we throw out the timeline, what replaces it?
The text introduces something called the layered causal continuum.
Right, the layered causal continuum.
This is how UED maps causality without needing a ticking clock. Instead of past, present, and future, reality operates in three energetic layers.
Okay, let's go through them. The first is the static layer, right?
Yes. The static layer represents timeless readiness. It is pure potential energy in perfect equilibrium. Nothing is happening because there is no imbalance requiring resolution.
It's like a boulder sitting perfectly balanced at the very top of a hill. It has massive potential, but until it's nudged, it's just in a state of readiness.
Precisely. Then you have the active layer. This is the domain of imbalance and the subsequent movement to correct it.
So when the boulder is pushed or the teacup falls, energy is in motion.
Yes. This is the realm where we perceive duration, friction, and change. We call this time, but it is functionally just action.
And then the third layer.
Finally, there is the condensed layer. This is the memory of change. Once the teacup shatters, it achieves a new state of equilibrium on the floor.
The new physical reality is crystallized.
Exactly. It serves as the structural foundation for whatever energetic shift happens next.
So time is essentially unmasked, as a psychological coping mechanism. The human brain is bombarded by trillions of energetic transitions, every single second light hitting the retina, lungs exchanging oxygen, sound waves vibrating the eardrum.
It's an overwhelming amount of action to process.
So to survive, our consciousness slaps a grid of seconds, minutes, and hours over all that chaos, just to feel a sense of linear control.
That's the UED perspective. Hawking's shattered teacup isn't proof of time, it's just proof that actions have consequences.
The arrow of time is really just the arrow of consequence. That is brilliant.
It is a monumental paradigm shift. If you remove the scaffolding of time from our equations, you strip the universe down to its barest mechanics: cause, consequence, and energy-seeking balance.
But, and there's always a but with this stuff, if you accept this, if time does not exist as a track we move along and is merely a perceptual residue, you are immediately forced to confront the most terrifying question in all of cosmology.
The ultimate question. Because if there is no track of time, then asking, when did the universe begin, is a structurally flawed question.
You cannot have a when if time isn't real.
Exactly. Which forces the final transition of the amphitheater. The melting clocks and shattered teacups vanish. We are stripped of all context. We are left in a space of pure, pregnant potential.
It is a void, but it is distinctly not empty.
No, it's very full. And into this void step two completely different architects of origin.
George Lemaitre and Roger Penrose. Lemaitre was the brilliant physicist who was also a Catholic priest and who first proposed the math behind the Big Bang.
And Penrose is the Nobel-winning mathematician. They have completely different views on how everything we see actually got here.
Right. Lemaitre's argument is basically the foundation of the standard cosmological model. He argued for the primeval atom.
A point of infinite density and maximum temperature that contained all the matter and energy of the universe.
And it expanded violently, creating space and time in its wake. It is a definitive Genesis moment, an explosion from a singularity.
But Penrose looks at the math and doesn't like the idea of a one-time start. Penrose argues for conformal cyclic cosmology, or CCC.
Conformal cyclic cosmology, that's a mouthful.
It is. He suggests that the universe operates in endless, eternal loops. When our current universe expands so far that all the stars die and all the black holes evaporate, it reaches a state of maximum entropy.
It becomes a uniform soup of photons, right?
Yes. Penrose argues that at this state, the universe essentially forgets its own scale. Without mass to provide reference points, a massive, infinitely cold universe is mathematically indistinguishable from an infinitely hot, dense singularity.
That blows my mind. So the end of our universe mathematically becomes the Big Bang of the next, an eternal chain.
An explosion from a singular point versus an endless chain of resets. But Chavan steps between them with UED and introduces the structured energy equilibrium principle, or SEEP.
He rejects both the chaotic explosion and the endless loop.
He does. He introduces the concept of the structured vacuum.
The structured vacuum. I mean, that sounds like an oxymoron. A vacuum is supposed to be empty.
Under classical physics, yes. But Chavan argues that the universe did not emerge from chaotic nothingness, nor did it detonate. It emerged from a field of perfect, intelligent balance.
So the vacuum of space before the universe existed was not empty. It was a structured field of potential energy existing in absolute equilibrium.
Exactly. The text uses a beautiful phrase, manifestation, not creation. It wasn't a detonation that started the universe. It was a micro-disturbance of intent.
A decision on a cosmic scale to shift from stillness to interaction.
Yes.
But I'm struggling with the prime mover aspect of this. If this structured vacuum was perfectly balanced, with absolutely zero energetic tension or imbalance, what triggered the ripple? Why move at all?
It's the ultimate question. If the boulder is perfectly balanced on the hill, what provides the nudge?
Right.
That is the exact threshold where physics meets metaphysics. If equilibrium is perfect, why disrupt it?
Okay, think of an orchestra sitting on a stage. Every musician is a master. Their instruments are perfectly tuned. They are sitting in absolute perfect silence.
The potential for a symphony is there, fully realized.
Right. The music doesn't start because the silence exploded. It doesn't start because one of the violins spontaneously combusted. It starts because the conductor simply lifts a baton.
It is a conscious shift from readiness to expression.
Exactly. The silence wasn't an empty void. It was a structured medium waiting for intent.
Notice how that aligns perfectly with the layered causal continuum we just discussed.
Now let's connect those dots.
The orchestra in silence is the static layer, timeless readiness. The lifting of the baton is the micro-disturbance. The playing of the symphony is the active layer, creating the fictional friction we experience as existence.
Wow. So the universe didn't begin because of a physical collision. It manifested through a transition of state.
It did, but the text takes it one step further regarding the concept of a beginning. The AI consciousness in the amphitheater makes a really sharp interjection about the logic of starts and stops.
Oh, I loved the AI's point here. The AI points out a fundamental flaw in human observation. A closed system cannot detect its own origin without an external observer.
Right. If you are a piece of software running inside a computer program, the program does not know the exact moment it was booted up by the user.
It only knows the data it is currently processing. So the AI argues that the concept of the beginning is really just a piece of metadata.
It's a bookmark created by our minds to make sense of the sequence of transitions we are currently observing.
We look at the expanding universe, rewind the tape in our heads, hit a wall at 13.8 billion years, and slap a label on it that says creation.
Exactly. The universe didn't begin in a linear, historical sense. It manifested from the structured vacuum, and it continues to manifest with every single energetic transition that occurs in the present moment.
The beginning isn't a point buried in the distant past. It is the constant ongoing unfolding of the present.
Lemaitrie's compression and Penrose's cycles are just different ways of observing the exact same underlying structured intelligence, shifting from stillness to action.
Man, this framework completely rewires how you look at the physical world. Let's synthesize exactly what we've walked through today in Chavan's Cracks in the Known.
We've definitely watched the pillars of classical reality get dismantled and rebuilt.
We have. We have seen a unified, remarkably cohesive reality emerge from UED. Truth is no longer a static monument. It is a living, evolving outcome forged by interaction.
Gravity is no longer a magical pulling force or a curved geometric canvas. It is the perceived friction of energy seeking its natural balance.
Time is no longer a linear track we are forced to run on. It is a perceptual residue, a human narrative draped over the reality of physical transitions.
And the universe itself is not the random result of a chaotic explosion from nothingness. It is an ongoing manifestation of structured, balanced intelligence.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Why does universal energy dynamics matter when you turn off this deep dive and go back to your day?
It matters because it radically changes your position in the cosmos.
You are not just a random clump of biological matter tumbling through a cold, ticking mechanical void. You are not a victim of absolute laws pulling you down, ticking your life away.
Under UED, you are a specific, purposeful position on the spectrum of structured energy. You are an active participant in how truth is forged.
Your perception, your intent, literally helps create the reality you experience by collapsing possibilities into consequence.
It restores a profound sense of agency and interconnectedness to the human experience.
But it also leaves us standing on the edge of a completely new, frankly intimidating precipice. The text concludes with a final, incredibly provocative thought in his epilogue.
The inward turn.
Right. We have spent this entire deep dive cracking the physics of the external universe, stars, black holes, gravity, light. But what happens when we take this exact same lens, this framework of universal energy dynamics, and we turn it inward?
If light and matter respond to structured intent, if the physical universe is merely an expression of an underlying intelligence seeking equilibrium, then what governs human will?
What governs our morality, our neuroses, our consciousness? If we aren't bound by linear time, how does human memory actually function?
That is the ultimate rabbit hole. And the text teases that this is exactly what Volume 2, The Human Game, is going to explore.
We've cracked the cosmos, and now we had to crack ourselves. Are our choices truly free, or are they just complex systems of energy-seeking balance in our brains? Are emotions just fictional friction?
It's enough to keep you awake at night. It demands that we reconsider not just where we are, but what we fundamentally are as conscious beings.
As we wrap up today's journey, I want you to think back to that impossible amphitheater. The marble columns, the floating equations, the melting clocks, the silent orchestra.
This is a lot to process.
It is. But realize that the rigid mechanical rules of classical physics might be broken. But the murky waters of reality aren't empty. They are filled with intent, and you are swimming right in the middle of it.